Hey guys, Jake from 8020 Media here. Today we are talking about performance modifications and upgrades for the Nissan Altima. While you might not think of the Altima as a performance car or a good car for a performance build, the Nissan Altima actually came for a number of years with the same engine that the Nissan 350Z used, which was the VQ35DE. So who's to say that a Nissan Altima can't make a good performance car? In this video, I'm mostly going to be focusing on 3rd, 4th, and 5th generation Nissan Altimas with the QR25, the 2.5 liter engine, and the VQ35, the 3.5 liter that is the same as the one used in the Nissan 350Z. Now, for the 6th generation of Altimas from 2019 plus, they did have a similar 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine. So a lot of these modifications are going to be exactly the same for those Altimas with the naturally aspirated 2.5, but some of the newer ones also have a turbocharged 2-liter engine. The ones with the turbocharged engines are going to have a very different modification list. So this video here is going to focus on the 2.5 and 3.5 liter engines. Of course, the 3.5 is going to have more performance and power potential, and it's going to have a higher power capacity as well. And so while the mods on these lists are going to be the same for the two engines, just know that the power gains and the overall power levels and power limits are going to be higher on the 3.5 liter engines. So the Altima got the 350Z engine, which the one caveat to that is that unfortunately these naturally aspirated engines just don't make a whole lot of additional power without the addition of forced induction. So unless we add a turbocharger, we are relatively limited in how much power we can get out of these engines. Before we jump into the best modifications for the Altima, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the power potential of these engines. The VQ35 engines can handle about 400 wheel horsepower pretty safely. Like I mentioned, it's just going to take forced induction to get there. Without adding forced induction, we're limited to about 30 to 40 wheel horsepower power gains off of basic bolt-on modifications. Those basic bolt-ons are going to be what we're focusing on here. I will talk a little bit about turbo kits as well as camshaft upgrades, because those are the other less bolt-on modification that you can do to keep your car still naturally aspirated and get some good power gains out of it. And so the modifications that we're going to cover here for the Nissan Altima are tuning, cold air intakes, exhaust systems, headers, pulleys, and a throttle body upgrade. Those are going to be the 5 basic bolt-on modifications for the Nissan Altima, and all of those modifications, when done in conjunction with each other, will give you about 30 to 40 wheel horsepower. Now, all of these modifications are relatively basic bolt-ons, and so instead of walking you through each one specifically, I thought the best way to structure this video was to give you basically a by power goal, by budget. So the first thing that I have is a $1,000 budget is good for about 10 to 20 wheel horsepower. With a $1,000 budget, the things that you'll want to focus on are tuning, a cold air intake, and a set of pulleys. From there, if we add another $500 onto our budget, we can get about 20 to 30 wheel horsepower for a total of $1,500. We're going to want to do the same tuning, intake, pulleys, but then we're also going to want to add headers onto it. Headers are going to be where the biggest gains come from within the exhaust system, and so that's the best exhaust modification. They are a little bit more difficult to install, of course, but they offer fantastic power gains. And then to kind of fully maximize these engines in a bolt-on configuration, it's going to cost you about $2,000. We're going to do the same tuning, intake, pulleys, headers, and then we're going to go ahead and add on to that an exhaust system and a throttle body upgrade. The exhaust system and the throttle body upgrade are what are going to help to get you an extra about 10 to 15 wheel horsepower over the previous setup that we discussed, and all of these mods can be done for about $2,000. If you really wanted to maximize your naturally aspirated performance, you could upgrade the intake manifold, but a lot of intake manifold upgrades are going to run you close to $1,000, and so in my opinion, they just aren't worth it from a price to performance standpoint. And then again, if you wanted to maximize things in naturally aspirated format, you could go ahead and do camshaft upgrades, but a proper set of camshafts that are still daily drivable are going to add about 30 wheel horsepower, but especially after installation and all of that, you're likely going to be looking at somewhere around $2,000 or maybe even more than $2,000. You do get good performance and power gains out of camshafts. You're just looking at a pretty hefty hefty price to get that. But at the same time, $2,000 is going to be what it's going to cost to do all of these other bolt-ons that will get you the same 30 to 40 wheel horsepower that a camshaft can get you. You probably don't just want to throw a camshaft on your otherwise completely stock Nissan Altima though. So in a naturally aspirated configuration, if you wanted to spend somewhere around $4,000, you could do all of those modifications that we discussed plus a camshaft and likely see somewhere around 70 wheel horsepower power gains. However, the big thing is once we start talking about spending that kind of money is where we sort of get to the jump off point where we decide maybe we should just go ahead and turbocharge this thing. The reason I say that is because you don't want to go ahead and do all your tuning, your intake, your headers, and your exhaust system and all these modifications and then add a turbocharger later on, because once you turbocharge it, you're going to have a different tuning, you're going to have a different exhaust setup, you don't have headers anymore, and so a lot of that money would be wasted on bolt-on modifications if you then turn around and decide you want to go the turbocharging route. Ultimately, turbocharging is where the really big power gains can come from here. Like I mentioned, the VQ35 models of the Nissan Altima can handle about 400 wheel horsepower, which would make your Altima pretty fast. But the biggest considerations with turbocharging is just the cost of doing it. If you build a proper turbo setup, and I'm not talking about buying the $1,200 eBay turbo kits and all of the supporting modifications, you're probably on a very low end, about $7,500 into it. And if you really want to do it and do it right, with all the proper supporting modifications, you can very easily break past $10,000, $12,000 to build these things. So ultimately, turbocharging becomes very expensive. The alternative to turbocharging though is you spend $2,000 to get 30 or 40 wheel horsepower, or you spend $4,000 to throw a camshaft on there and get about 70 wheel horsepower. Ultimately, there's a few different considerations and kind of decisions to be made, but the, again, biggest limitation to these engines is that they're naturally aspirated, and there just isn't a whole lot that you can do without throwing forced induction on them. Even camshafts start to get a lot more complex, and so spending $2,000 and getting 30 to 40 wheel horsepower isn't a terrible situation here, but you might find yourself rather wanting to put that budget towards aesthetic modifications like wheels and coilovers and things like that, because even though you're adding 30 to 40 wheel horsepower, your Nissan Altima will get a nice pickup. It will feel and be noticeably more powerful and faster, but you're not going to be building like the super high performance Nissan Altima that's going to go out there and beat all of these other cars on the street. It all comes down to budget and how much you're willing to spend to get the power levels that you want to get. Anyways, guys, that covers it for this video. I hope you appreciate all the insight. Like I mentioned, we're mostly talking about the 2.5 and the 3.5 liters here. And so if you guys have one of the newer Altimas that has the turbocharged 2 liter, you're in for a good treat, because just some basic bolt-on modifications and tuning can make a lot more power a lot more easily than we can on these naturally aspirated engines. But we'll have to go ahead and cover that in a different video. So please click that like button, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for our future content.